paper looks harmless. One thin sheet pinned to a corkboard in a gray barracks hallway, curling slightly at the corners, trembling every time the door slams somewhere down the corridor. Most men pass it without slowing down. To them, it is just another notice, another order, another piece of army routine destined to yellow with age. But you stop, because for 3 years this page has lived in your head like a loaded round waiting in the chamber. SAS selection. 2 words. That is all it takes to divide your life into before and after. You have already seen war. You have heard mortars fall close enough to feel the pressure inside your teeth. You have watched medics cut through fabric soaked black with blood. You have carried men heavier than yourself through dust, rain, and fear. You thought pain had already introduced itself to you in every language it knew. You were wrong. The SAS is not spoken about the way normal units are spoken about. It arrives in whispers, in half-finished stories. In the silence that follows a name no one explains. Men who go further, stay longer, and come back changed if they come back at all. No crowds, no glory, no promise of rescue. Only harder ground, darker nights, and missions that disappear before dawn. You reach up, tear the sheet free, fold it once, and step into cold rain. By morning, your old life will still exist. It will not belong to you. By the time you arrive at Hereford, you already understand one truth. Nobody comes here by accident. Every man stepping off the bus has already survived something that would break most soldiers. Some come from the parachute regiment, some from the Royal Marines, some from engineers, signals, infantry battalions, or reconnaissance units that demand more than ordinary service ever asks. They are fit, disciplined, combat-tested men. In almost any other place in the British Army, they would be seen as exceptional. Here, they are simply the starting line. No one says much that first morning. There is no need. You can read enough in the faces around you. Pride, fatigue, curiosity, a little fear. Not the kind a man admits out loud, but the kind that settles deep in the stomach when he knows he has chosen to walk into something with no guarantees at all. That is what makes volunteering for the SAS different from being assigned somewhere dangerous. You were not sent here. You asked for this. That decision matters. Because from this point on, you cannot blame a posting order, a superior officer, or bad luck. Every frozen hill, every sleepless march, every moment when your lungs burn and your mind starts begging for mercy, you chose it. You signed your own name beneath the possibility of failure. And failure here is not small. It is public in the quietest way possible. No shouting, no humiliation. You just stop. You get on the truck. You disappear. The course moves on without you as if you were never there. That is why the men who volunteer are already different before selection even begins. Not because they know they will pass. Most of them will not. They are different because they looked at a door almost everyone avoids, and instead of walking past it, they opened it themselves. The first lesson of selection is simple. The hills do not care who you were before you arrived. It does not matter whether you served in Afghanistan, passed P Company, or earned a reputation as the hardest man in your battalion. None of that buys you a single step in the Bergen beacons. The mountains strip rank, stories, and pride away faster than any instructor ever could. Out there, all that remains is a man, a map, a compass, and the weight on his back. Your Bergen cuts into your shoulders from the first day. 25 kilograms before water, before your rifle, before the small pieces of kit that somehow feel heavier with every kilometer. The straps grind through your shirt. The skin beneath them turns raw, then wet, then bloody. Your boots fill with heat and friction until every step feels like you are pressing your feet onto broken glass. But the physical pain is only part of it. The real damage starts in the silence. The directing staff do not encourage you. They do not threaten you. They do not explain how close you are to the time limit or how far you still have left to go. They hand you a grid reference and a deadline, and then they let the land do the talking. Fog swallows the ridgelines. Rain turns the ground slick and treacherous. The cold creeps into your hands until even unfolding your map feels difficult. You begin to understand that selection is not designed to test whether you can suffer for a few hours. It is designed to discover how you think while suffering. Men begin to vanish quickly. One day they are beside you at the start point, adjusting straps, checking bearings, saying almost nothing. The next day they are gone. Some miss timings, some lose direction, some simply reach the point where the pain becomes more convincing than the goal. When that happens, the truck appears, quiet and final. No speeches, no second chance. Just the end. Then comes the march everyone knows about before they ever arrive. The long drag. 64 kilometers over open mountain ground, inside 20 hours, with weight still hanging from your shoulders like punishment. By now, your body feels used up. Toenails blacken. Knees ache with every descent. Your lower back burns. But the deeper battle is no longer with the terrain. It is with the voice in your own head, the one that tells you no one would blame you for stopping. That is the moment the hills decide everything. Not when you feel strong, but when you feel empty. Not when the finish is near, but when it still seems impossibly far. Because the men who pass are not the men who suffer least. They are the men who keep moving after suffering stops meaning anything at all. Passing the hills does not mean your suffering is over. It only means the regiment has decided you are worth testing somewhere worse. The jungle feels like stepping into a world designed to rot men alive. The air is heavy enough to drink, thick with heat, moisture, and the sweet smell of decay. Within minutes, your uniform is soaked through. Within hours, your hands wrinkle, your boots stay wet, and your skin begins to soften in places that should never soften. Every movement costs more here. Every breath feels borrowed. In the Bergen beacons, the land punished you openly. In the jungle, it does it quietly. Leeches fasten themselves to your legs when you cross streams. Insects bite through fabric and leave your arms covered in swollen welts. Mold creeps onto your kit. Your weapon must be cleaned constantly. Your feet become a problem that never goes away. If you neglect them for even a day, the skin starts peeling, splitting, and inviting infection into your body. The jungle does not need to kill you quickly. It can let discomfort do the work over time. But this phase is not really about heat or insects. It is about how you function when misery becomes the background to every task. You move in small teams through thick vegetation where visibility collapses to a few meters and every route feels like the wrong one. Navigation becomes slower, more deliberate, and more dangerous. You learn to read ground that barely seems readable. You learn that a mistake here does not just cost time. It can separate you from your team, expose your position, or turn a planned movement into a blind stumble through hostile terrain. The directing staff watch more closely now. In the hills, they measured endurance. In the jungle, they study character. They want to know what kind of man appears when sleep disappears, food runs low, and irritation starts eating away at discipline. Can you stay sharp when your body is screaming? Can you follow quietly when someone else leads well? Can you lead calmly when everyone is tired, hungry, and one bad decision away from disaster? Because in the SAS, being hard is not enough. Plenty of men are hard. The question is whether you can remain useful when hardship stops being an event and becomes your entire environment. By the time you reach escape and evasion, your body is already worn thin. That is exactly the point. The regiment does not want to know how you perform when you are fresh, fed, and fully alert. It wants to know what remains of you when exhaustion has stripped away comfort, confidence, and pretense. You are dropped into the countryside wearing old clothes that do nothing to keep out the cold. Your rations are barely enough to matter. You get a short head start, and then the hunt begins. Infantry units sweep across the landscape. Tracker dogs pull at their leads. Helicopters search from above. Every hedgerow, ditch, and tree line becomes both cover and trap. You move carefully, slowly at first, then desperately when time starts slipping away. Hunger sharpens your senses, but fatigue dulls your judgment. You begin to realize that hiding is not the same as surviving. Surviving means thinking clearly while fear keeps tapping at your ribs from the inside. Then they catch you. That moment is not failure by itself. Capture is built into the test. What matters is what happens after. A bag goes over your head. Noise hammers into your ears. You are forced into stress positions that turn minutes into something heavier than hours. Muscles tremble. Knees shake. Your shoulders feel as if they are being torn apart from the inside. And through all of it, voices keep coming at you from every angle. Threats, lies, false kindness, promises of relief. One easy answer, they say. Just one. But you already know the rules. Name, rank, service number, date of birth, nothing more. That is where selection stops testing your body and starts testing identity itself. Because silence under pressure is not only about discipline, it is about control. About knowing that once pain enters the room, the temptation to trade truth for comfort becomes stronger than pride. The men who pass are the ones who understand that even broken, frightened, and exhausted, some lines still cannot be crossed. When the bag finally comes off your head and the course is over, you expect some kind of release. A speech, maybe? A moment that tells you the suffering meant something visible. Instead, the end arrives almost quietly. A hand extends. A sand-colored beret is placed in front of you. The winged dagger badge catches the light for half a second. Welcome to the regiment. That is all. No parade. No music. No celebration large enough to match what it took to get here. Out of the men who started, only a handful remain, and even now, the regiment is careful not to flatter you. Because passing selection does not prove that you are ready for operations. It only proves that you might become the kind of man who can be trusted with them. That distinction matters more than anything. You are now a badged trooper, but the real shaping begins after the badge goes on. Continuation training starts immediately, and it is ruthless in a different way. Selection broke your body and tested your will. This next phase begins rebuilding you into something more precise, more dangerous, and far more useful. Raw endurance is no longer enough. From here on, mistakes are measured in dead teammates and failed missions. You enter rooms built for live fire where bullets crack past walls only inches from friendly men. You learn to move through doorways with mechanical calm, to distinguish targets from non-targets in fractions of a second, to shoot accurately in spaces so tight that one lapse in judgment could kill the operator beside you. You study demolitions not as spectacle but as mathematics under pressure. Too little explosive and the breach fails. Too much and you murder everyone inside, including the hostages you came to rescue. Then there is medicine, signals, surveillance, foreign weapons, communications, and the endless repetition that turns skill into instinct. The badge on your beret may say you made it in. The training that follows exists to remind you that getting in was only permission to start becoming what the regiment actually needs. Once you survive continuation training, the regiment stops treating you like a general-purpose operator and begins shaping you for a specific kind of war. That is when the world of the specialist troops opens up, and you realize the SAS is not one profession. It is several, each one built to reach places conventional forces cannot. If you are assigned to air troop, the sky becomes part of your battlefield. You learn military freefall at altitudes where the air is thin enough to kill you if your oxygen fails. You step from the aircraft into black emptiness with nothing beneath you except cold, speed, and trust in your equipment. At 25,000 feet, there is no drama, only procedure. Check altitude, check heading, hold stability, find the drop zone. The landing area may be no larger than a tennis court, hidden in countryside where no one is expecting armed men to fall out of the night. If you go to boat troop, water becomes the medium of invisibility. You train with closed-circuit rebreathers that leave no bubbles on the surface. You move through harbors, estuaries, and dark coastal approaches in freezing water that strips warmth from the body faster than fear ever could. You learn how to approach ships silently, how to place charges below the waterline, how to navigate in conditions where vision means almost nothing and touch becomes your only certainty. Mobility troop belongs to open ground, engines, and speed. Desert, long-range patrols, deep reconnaissance, Vehicle-mounted firepower. You learn how to keep machines alive in terrain that destroys tires, suspensions, and men with equal indifference. Mountain troop trains for the opposite extreme, cold, altitude, exposed ridgelines, and climates where a mistake in layering or movement can kill you before the enemy even appears. But the troop is only part of your identity. Every operator carries an additional specialty that makes the four-man patrol function as a complete fighting organism. One man may be the medic, capable of performing procedures in the dirt that most civilians would only ever see in a hospital trauma bay. Another may handle demolitions, another communications, another languages or surveillance. In the SAS, survival is never based on one heroic individual. It is built on four men whose skills interlock so tightly that when one moves, the whole patrol moves with him. That is what specialization really means here. Not prestige, not variety, precision. You are no longer just learning how to endure. You are learning how to become indispensable. Promotion to corporal changes the nature of the pressure. Until now, most of your struggle has been about proving that you can endure, perform, and earn your place among men who do not hand out respect lightly. But as a patrol commander, endurance is no longer the main standard. Decision-making is. In the SAS, a four-man patrol is not a minor element attached to someone else's plan. It is the plan, reduced to its sharpest and most dangerous form. Four men moving quietly, carrying everything they need, often too far from support for anyone else to save them if the situation turns bad. That means your decisions begin long before the mission starts. You choose the route, the insertion method, the load distribution, the timings, the contingencies, the extraction window. Every kilogram matters, every battery matters, every delay matters, and the men under you are not inexperienced soldiers waiting to be told what to do. They are seasoned operators. Each one is highly trained, highly capable, and fully able to recognize a weak leader within minutes. They follow you because the regiment put you in command. They trust you only if your judgment proves worthy of the risk you are asking them to carry. That is what makes this level so unforgiving. There is no comfortable distance between the order and the consequence. If a vehicle appears where intelligence said there would be none, you decide. If a target moves early, you decide. If your observation post is compromised in darkness and armed men are closing fast, you do not call headquarters and wait for approval from someone sitting safely behind a desk. Headquarters is a voice far away. You are the one lying in the dirt with the map, the radio, and 3 lives depending on the next sentence out of your mouth. When things go right, nobody hears about it. No article is written. No medal ceremony explains how close it came to failing. Your patrol slips out the way it came in, and the mission disappears into classified paperwork. But when things go wrong, they go wrong at arm's length, close enough for you to watch the cost unfold in real time. That is the burden of command here. You do not just lead the mission. You become responsible for every silence, every movement, and every man who trusted you enough to follow. By the time you become a sergeant, the regiment no longer measures you by what you can survive. It measures you by what you can carry. You have spent years operating in places most people will never hear named in public. Desert compounds, cramped city blocks, mountain tracks, safe houses lit by a single bulb, roads that look empty until they erupt with gunfire. You have seen missions unfold exactly as planned, which is rare, and you have seen them break apart in seconds, which is normal. Somewhere along the way, experience stopped feeling like confidence and started feeling like weight. The younger troopers notice it before you do. They watch how you enter a room, how you pause before crossing an exposed space, how you scan a face for intent before a hand ever moves. They copy the things you do not even realize you are teaching. That is because experience in the SAS is not just memory. It is pattern recognition sharpened by consequence. You have learned the difference between tension and panic, between a civilian frozen in fear and a man about to fight, between a bad feeling and a real warning. But knowledge like that is never free. There are nights when the regiment is quiet, when the gear is packed away and Hereford seems almost ordinary, and that is when the mind reopens old doors. A figure in a corridor turning too fast. A split-second judgment made under poor light. the sound a round makes when it hits masonry, and the different sound it makes when it does not. These are not things you discuss over a drink. The culture does not encourage that kind of honesty. You stay professional. You stay composed. You carry it privately, and still, your job is to shape the next generation. You take younger men and teach them what manuals cannot. When to move, when to wait, when silence is stronger than speed, when fear is useful, and when it becomes fatal. That is what experience becomes at this level. Not pride, not stories. A burden you keep carrying, so the men behind you have a better chance of making it home. By the time you reach the level of squadron sergeant major and later regimental sergeant major, the fight changes again. You are no longer judged by how fast you can move through a doorway or how long you can carry weight across a mountain. You are judged by whether the entire regiment around you remains sharp enough to survive the next war. This is where leadership becomes less visible and more essential. A squadron commander may hold formal authority, but you hold something harder to replace. You know the men, not as names on a roster, but as human beings under strain. You know who is steady, who is distracted, who is carrying private trouble into training, and who is one deployment away from a mistake that could kill a patrol. In most units, these would be administrative concerns. In the SAS, they are operational facts. A trooper's divorce is not just a personal issue. It may become hesitation in a hostage rescue. A knee injury is not just a medical problem. It may become a fatal delay on a hillside miles from extraction. You sit in the space between sympathy and necessity, forced to make choices that will disappoint good men for reasons they may never fully accept. Pull one operator from the team and you weaken the patrol. Leave him in place and you may be gambling with lives. There are no clean answers, only consequences. At regimental level, the burden grows even larger. Now you are no longer preserving one squadron. You are protecting the standards and culture of the entire regiment. Discipline here is not about polished boots or loud corrections on a parade square. It is about weapon handling, fieldcraft, fitness, readiness, medical competence, and the quiet habits that keep elite men alive in unforgiving places. When standards slip, you do not need to shout. You only need to remind them what sloppiness means in this world. Not embarrassment, not paperwork, a coffin, a flag, a name carved into stone. That is what holds the regiment together at this level. Not fear of punishment, but respect for the cost of failure. In the SAS, becoming an officer does not place you above the regiment's judgment. It places you directly beneath it. As a troop commander and later as a squadron commander, you may hold rank on paper, but paper means very little once the operation begins. The men under you have already endured the same selection, the same hills, the same jungle, the same interrogation, and the same years of sharpening that turned them into operators. They are not impressed by insignia. They are impressed by competence. That is why officers in the regiment live under a different kind of pressure. In a conventional unit, rank can create distance. Orders travel downward because the structure demands it. In the SAS, structure still exists, but respect has to be earned in full view of men who know exactly what good leadership looks like. If you cannot navigate, they will know. If you hesitate at the wrong moment, they will know. If you speak with authority in the briefing room, but fail to carry yourself properly on the ground, they will know that too. As a troop commander, you lead 16 operators divided into 4 patrols. You coordinate moving parts that are already dangerous on their own, then try to make them work together under pressure, often alongside intelligence officers, aviation units, foreign special forces, or domestic counter-terror teams. As a squadron commander, the scale increases again. Now you are responsible for an entire Sabre squadron, men on standby for hostage rescues, counter-terror raids, direct action missions, or contingency responses that can launch with almost no warning at all. And yet the principle never changes. You do not ask these men to go where you would not go yourself. When the helicopter lifts, you are on it. When the charge is placed, you are close enough to feel the tension before the breach. When plans begin to collapse in darkness, you do not hide behind the authority of rank. You prove why the rank was given to you in the first place. That is the contract for officers here. Not command from safety, but leadership from proximity. Not obedience borrowed from position, but respect earned under the same risk as everyone else. By the time you become the commanding officer of 22 SAS, the battlefield has moved farther away from your hands, but never from your mind. You are a lieutenant colonel now, responsible not for one patrol, one troop, or one squadron, but for the entire regiment. Every operation, every deployment, every risk that carries SAS personnel into danger ultimately passes beneath your authority. The distance between you and the mission may have increased. The responsibility has not. In fact, it has become heavier than ever. Your days are spent in secure rooms and briefings with intelligence services, defense officials, and senior military leadership. The problems placed in front of you are the kind that have already outgrown normal solutions. A terror network preparing an attack. A weapons transfer moving through hostile ground. A hostage crisis balanced on a political knife edge. At this level, your decisions are no longer only tactical. They are strategic, legal, and national in consequence. But for all the polished tables and classified documents, the truth remains brutally simple. When you authorize an operation, real men will move because of your decision. Some of them are men you have trained, mentored, deployed beside, and watched grow into leaders themselves. You know their strengths. You know the risks. And you know, with painful clarity, that not all missions return every man who begins them. That is the private burden of command at this height. The public will never see it. They will not see the names you remember, the funerals you attended, the letters written to families, or the memorial stones passed each morning in Hereford. But you see them, every day, and every new decision is made in the shadow of the old ones. At the top of the ladder, the war becomes quieter, wider, and far more lonely. As Director of Special Forces, you no longer command a single regiment. You oversee the entire architecture of Britain's most secret military power. The SAS, the SBS reconnaissance elements, signals, aviation support. Specialist units that operate so far from public view that even their existence is often blurred behind official silence. Thousands of elite personnel, spread across missions, continents, and layers of classification, ultimately move inside a structure that answers to you. You work in secure rooms where daylight does not matter. Maps cover walls. Screens carry updates from places most citizens will never know British forces are touching. Red markers for operations already in motion. Blue for developing targets. Yellow for allied missions that may soon become your concern. Intelligence chiefs sit across from you. Senior military leaders do the same. Sometimes ministers. Sometimes the Prime Minister. The conversations are calm, measured, almost clinical. The consequences are not, because every option on the table ends the same way. Men go forward. At this level, there is no noise of rotor blades in your ears, no mud on your boots, no rifle in your hands. And yet the weight is heavier than it has ever been. You have lived every lower stage of this system. You remember the selection hills, the jungle, the silence before a breach, the responsibility of sending 4 men into darkness. Now all of those burdens have merged into one larger truth. Entire networks of risk, secrecy, and violence now pass through your judgment. And still, there is no parade at the summit. No applause. Just another morning in a windowless room, another map covered in red, and the knowledge that somewhere tonight, men you are responsible for will move through hostile ground where no one will ever know their names. You started with a single decision, a sheet of paper on a barracks wall. A quiet choice made by one man who thought he was volunteering for a harder life. What you were really volunteering for was a heavier one. That is the truth waiting at every level of the SAS. The challenge is never only about skill, courage, or endurance. It is about weight. First, the weight on your back. Then the weight of silence. Then the weight of a patrol depending on your judgment. Then the weight of younger men copying your every move. Then the weight of a regiment, a mission, a nation, and names that may one day be carved into stone because of a decision you made in a room no one will ever see. From the outside, people imagine the top must feel like glory. They imagine power, prestige, and mastery. But the men who actually climb that far learn something very different. In this world, higher does not mean easier. It does not even mean better. It simply means heavier. And still, every generation, someone sees that notice on the wall, reaches up, and tears it down.